Bookworms, welcome to the Weekend Readers Book Club. Thank you for joining us. In this episode, we are discussing the non-fiction book entitled Mr. Playboy, Hugh Hefner and the American Dream by Stephen Watts. Now, as the title suggests, Mr. Playboy, Hugh Hefner and the American Dream is a non-fiction story, or non-fiction telling, basically life recap to a degree of Hugh Hefner and the business that he built, which is Playboy. This story covers everything from Hugh Hefner's personal life, his ups and downs, how he actually started the business, and it also covers the business side of things also, where we look at Playboy as its own entity and the endeavours that it sort of ventured into from the 1950s onwards. Now, I have read Mr. Playboy, Hugh Hefner and the American Dream by Stephen Watts, and this is my review or recap of the massive, humongous book I just read. Let's go. So off the bat, I want to say that this book has the stuff that I like about non-fiction, but it also has a lot of stuff I dislike about non-fiction. What I liked about non-fiction with this book is the recap of Hugh Hefner's life, especially from when he started Playboy. I enjoyed the Playboy aspect of it. What I didn't like, and one of the issues I have with non-fiction, is they seem to start telling a story when they were, when Hugh Hefner was 1 year old. Well, when he was one, he didn't really do much, you know what I mean? So there's large chapters of his parents and himself growing up. And I get why you're trying to tell that story, but it could have been condensed down a lot. And that's where I struggle with, because it's like, I don't care. It's probably the wrong word, but I know what I'm getting into when the story is called Mr. Playboy, Hugh Hefner and the American Dream. I want to know about Hugh Hefner, as in his adult life, his persona, about him being Mr. Playboy, and I want to know about the Playboy business and, all the other cool stuff that comes along being Mr. Playboy. So that was one gripe. I would have started, like I said, I would have condensed down the first couple of chapters into one and then started it off really in detail where they take off where Hugh Hefner goes overseas because he's in the military. He has a little girl at home that he writes to, their sweethearts or together. They write back and forth, and then when he returns from his military service, they rekindle their relationship. Be it not so good, but it is what it is. But she's an important figure in the story because the lady that he is writing to becomes the mother of his first two children. So it's an integral part of the story, but also she's there also from the transition of Hugh Hefner as, let's say, an individual or just a straight-laced person, and she watches and is part of and sees the unfolding of Hugh Hefner turning into I'm going to say the Hugh Hefner that people see and relate to on a bigger scale. We're talking, the women, the clothes, the pajamas, the bunnies, all that. She was there at the first incarnation of it. So that's where I would have picked the story up. But hey, I had to learn about when Hugh Hefner was 1 year old. Besides that, I wish the story went a lot more in detail in relation to the parties at the Playboy Mansion and also the actual business itself of Playboy Incorporated or PPE or PPL, whatever it's called. It was really intriguing because it's somewhat Stephen Watts does a story where it's somewhat as Hugh Hefner grows in age throughout the book, it captures his personal lifestyle and also his business. So it gives you snapshots of each stage throughout life as he, gets older, which is great. Some of it is good, some of it's bad, some of it's a vibe. But there are aspects of the book where I wish they went a hell of a lot deeper. But I mean, then you're sort of getting into something that, Stephen Watts isn't writing. You're sort of changing the whole non-fiction story of it. As I would like to have seen the story go a bit more in-depth in relation to the 60s and 70s for the public backlash, but then also the huge public backlash in the 80s and 90s. I would love to have gone more detail in relation to the major parties that they had at the mansions, and just, I get what Stephen Watts was trying to do in relation to capture all data, and he has got a lot of reference at the back of the book that you can then go and reference yourself to review more information. But I think overall, I just wanted a bit more detail in relation to probably just the iconic aspects of Playboy itself, i.e. the parties, the women, but also the business and the turmoil that the business got throughout its 50, 60, now 70, is it still going? 70-year publication. But the book wasn't all bad. It was enlightening. I did find out that, Hugh Hefner, how do I put this? He seemed like a very lonely person. When you read throughout what the book did detail, it sort of comes across that he was very lonely. Yeah, he had a lot of fun. He had a hell of a lot of fun, but as well, it's sort of like a bit lonely. It was crazy to see that there was actually 2 Playboy mansions. Never knew that. And it was crazy to see on the recourse of all the public outcry in relation to the publication of Playboy magazine, and just its expansion into clubs, casinos, business ventures or TV and film, that they nearly went bust a few times, which I was really surprised at because I never knew that. I was also taken back that Playboy actually did, what's the word I'm looking for? For me, when I think of Playboy magazine, it's very arty photos, but they did some explicit photos during a period of time where this was the new rage, and, backlash happened to it, but not backlash from the public, but backlash from its own consumer base or group, and we're like, no, we don't want that, and then they sort of turned it back to the arty side of things, which I was really surprised at because I never knew that. So overall, an interesting book, Mr. Playboy, the Hugh Hefner and the American Dream. So the question is, will Mr. Playboy, Hugh Hefner and the American Dream by Stephen Watts be going onto my bookshelf as one of the books I will keep and reread? The answer is no. I'm glad I read it. But there is no substance to go back to it. It was an intriguing story, so Mr. Playboy, Hugh Hefner and the American Dream will be donated to another person to read, and hopefully they get some enjoyment out of it as well. So Bookworms, as a custom here on the Weekend Readers Book Club, as one book closes, another book has to open, and it is now time to find out what the next read for the Weekend Readers Book Club is. And Bookworms, we can tell you that we are going back to fiction, and we're going completely left field in this one. We are reading Accidental Heroes by Danielle Steele. Yes, Danielle Steele, claimed author, I guess. Don't know how this got into my pile of books to read, but it is what it is. Accidental Heroes, Danielle Steele. I read the back blurb. Sounds interesting. So you are the next read for the Weekend Readers Book Club. So Bookworms, that was my discussion and rant for Mr. Playboy, Hugh Hefner and the American Dream by Stephen Watts. A book, as I said, it was enjoyable to read, except for the first part where you learn about Hugh Hefner being a little kid and his parents and how he grew up. And it's like, I don't want to hear that. I just want to get into the story part. But it was interesting because I learned something. And I think that's the whole purpose of nonfiction, right? To go a bit more in depth in relation to people's lives and maybe learn something. But that's what I did. I learned a few things with this book. Again, not for me, so it's going to be donated. But in saying that, an enjoyable read nonetheless. So Bookworms, that will be our episode for today. Thank you for joining us, as always. And until next time, happy reading.